Sometimes I come up with a shootout myself, sometimes I get a request. Today I'll do something by request, which actually I think makes a lot of sense. So without further ado, I think it's time for another fountain pen shootout. And today we'll be having a look at two small pens. The new, relatively new, TWSBI, aka the TWSBI Mini, and the Kaweco Sport Classic. Two small pens, two portable pens, two demonstrators. You can get the Mini as a complete demonstrator that doesn't have the black piston turning knob and the black cap. It's just completely clear. You can get the Kaweco Sport in an all-black version, as you can the Mini. So there's quite an interesting comparison to be made here. Now, obviously, there are some differences. The most poignant being that this one costs, I think, $16.95. That's euros. So what's that? $20 or something. And this one costs $50. So it's quite a bit more expensive. But this is a piston filler. You can see the piston moving in there when I turn this. So I mean, this holds a lot of ink. This pen, well, it's pretty much a cartridge pen. You can use a converter. I'm afraid I've just thrown that out somewhere to have it clean, but it's a small, I'll show you that in the writing sample, a Monteverde mini converter that just fits, but it's, you know, it doesn't really fit that well onto the section, and it rattles around a bit. It can't really become this large because the barrel is just long enough to keep it in place, but it's not ideal. So usually I just refill a cartridge that will at least fit in, and the Monteverde mini converter doesn't hold that much more ink. It's just easier to use. You can convert this pen to an eyedropper, but there are some issues with that which I discuss in the later part of this video. This one has a 23 karat gold-plated nib, and it's very, very smooth. I love that nib. The Mini has a regular steel nib. It comes in quite some grades, extra fine, medium, broad, I think, and that is... I'm not sure the Kaweco offers an extra fine. It does have fine, medium, broad, and double broad. The double broads are not gold-plated, so they are just regular, the same color as the TWSBI Mini nib. And that's pretty much all there's to it. So I think you would like to see a size comparison. Well, capped, the Kaweco Sport is definitely a bit smaller. Uncapped, and I'm not posting here, I'm just comparing the two pens. Now that difference is no longer as pronounced. Nib size is a little smaller on the Kaweco Sport. And posted, let me just, you know that the Mini has a thread which is quite nice to post the cap. And the Kaweco, you just slide in and sort of squeeze that shut. Once they are posted, again, the Mini is just a little bit larger. I also think the Mini has a somewhat nicer section, which is I think quite pleasant to hold. The Kaweco section is a bit smaller and a bit narrower, so if that's what you're looking for, then I guess that works. Both pens, when posted, offer a decent size to you know, hold, even for people with relatively large hands. And that's pretty much all there's to it, all I can tell you about the pens. So I'll show you how to take both apart. With the Mini, I'll do that briefly. I've done a shootout between the Diamond 540, another pen by TWSBI, and the Mini. I do it a bit more extensively there, but I don't want to be redundant, so I'll go through the motions quickly. I'll show you how to take the Kaweco apart, and then I'll do a writing sample, and that's all there's to it. So I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Okay. A TWSBI Mini and a Kaweco Sport Classic. I've already shown you once how to take this apart, but let's do this very quickly once again. Nib and feed, they can be pulled out. It's a little difficult, but you can actually do it. It's easy to take out the nib collar, which is the black thing you see here. Getting out the nib and the feed from the nib collar is possible. You just have to pull hard. I would not recommend it. It's unless you really need to do that for extensive cleaning or to work on the nib and feed. They're in there very tightly, and you wouldn't want to ruin that. So I wouldn't go there. Okay, here we have the piston, the barrel, of course, and the piston. You take the TWSBI wrench, you put that in there, you turn to the right. You can take the whole piston out. You can twist off the blind cap and the piston guiding, the piston rod guide, I guess that's the way to put it. Now I have to turn to the left, which is still counterintuitive to me, but do that and you put this back in place. I think I do this in more detail in the TWSBI 540 versus the Mini Shootout. So here we have the Mini, and then we have the Kaweco Sport Classic. Today I'll be using this converter, a Monteverde mini converter, because that's the only converter I could fit in there, and even that is not entirely secure. So what about the Kaweco Sport? How does this work? Well, you can take the clip off, as you may know. These are separate things. You can buy them in silver too if you like that. They come in a bunch of finishes, as 3 of these currently. And different finishes here, including colored ones. This is the Sport Classic, meaning it has a gold-plated nib, not a I don't know, rhodium or whatever nib it is, some type of steel nib. This is a steel nib too, except this one has gold plating, and I really love that nib. Unscrew the barrel. You can put ink in there, put some silicone grease on there, and then a rubber O-ring, and you should be okay. The only thing is, you see the black nib collar in there. Ink gets stuck between that and the inside of the section, and that looks a little odd. I personally don't care for that much, so I don't use this as an eyedropper anymore. Nib and feed, well, they can be removed by pulling them out in a straight manner, so don't twist them. A simple feed and a simple but I think very effective nib. This is the broad nib. It's nice. It's not huge, but it's very smooth. There is a little bit on the section, sort of a notch this slides into. So that's good. You know how to align it, and then you put it back in. Let me see. I don't think there's a specific. No, it fits in anyway, I guess. You put that in. Make sure nib and feed are aligned well, and you're ready to go. So that's pretty much all there's to it. Now, when it comes to this converter, it has an issue. It's made of very hard plastic, so it doesn't really fit onto the nipple at the back end of the section. So it's loose. You see, it just falls out. Now the funny thing is, when you put the barrel in place, it's just the right size, and as you can see, the converter cannot get dislodged. But still, the connection between the two isn't perfect. So you may be best off by quite simply using cartridges for this pen. It's that simple. But okay, today we didn't want to use cartridges. We wanted to use bottled ink. I'll be using Parker Quink. It's very difficult to fill this pen. So what I'm doing here is I just take a syringe. I draw up some ink. This is already way too much for this small converter. And I just fill up the converter like this, because it doesn't really fit well into the section. You get a problem that it will not really draw up any ink, etc. And then I just squeeze some into the feed. There we go. I just screw that in place and I dip it once. That should get me enough ink for a reasonable flow. Just wipe off the section there. There we go. With the TWSBI, it's a lot easier. Dunk it in the ink, and you have ink. All there's to it. So, I'll grab some paper. Okay, so the TWSBI Mini this is a broad nib, but it was stubbed by Dan from FB Geeks. So you cannot really compare it to this Kaweco Sport, which is a broad nib, but that's straight, you know. This is a factory broad, so it's nothing has been modified in this pen. Notice the difference in saturation between the two pens, right? here we have, I have squeezed ink into the feed. I have dipped the nib and feed into the ink. But what you see here is a pen that flows really well, that has a very smooth nib. There's very little resistance from the paper. But that's all there's to it. With the TWSBI, it flows well. An italic always gives a somewhat different writing experience. That's just the way these pens work. But what you see is also quite a bit more saturation. The ink is much darker in this pen than is in this pen. You have seen that both pens were filled from this bottle, so there's that's all there's to it. When it comes to line variation, being an italic now, or actually a stub, the Mini offers some line variation by itself. The Kaweco Sport offers a little bit of line variation, but this is really all there's to it. It's not that pronounced. When it comes to wetness, I've worked a little bit on the nib of my my Mini. I still want to say 540, but it's the Mini. I thought it was a little dry when I got it. It's much better now. It flows well, and as you can see, it's very wet. With the 540, with the Sport, I'm getting confused today. Flow may be a bit drier. Still very smooth, very pleasant to use. Nice even patch of ink, but drier than the Mini. And that's pretty much all there's to it. So, two small pens serving different purposes. The Kaweco Sport is quite a bit cheaper than the Mini. But the Mini has a piston-filled mechanism, so it will hold more ink. A lot less of a hassle than that Monteverde Mini converter, which doesn't really fit in, etc. But it is more expensive, so it's up to you what you choose. In both pens you will get something that is nice, and both are a bit different. So it's up to you. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.